Hi, Ann Cornick from Paint and Porcelain Exchange, and I'm here to work with beginners and help them get started in China painting, and also trying to encourage those that have been painting a while to paint along with me. Today we're talking about design. It's one of those things that I don't talk about a whole lot because it's something that I didn't learn about. If you're a beginner, people don't usually tell you a whole lot about design, mainly because you use a lot of studies when you're first getting going. And if you don't, and you use a study in a couple of ways. You can use it to trace, or if there's a line drawing, or you can use it to draw from. But either way, you're learning the way that the flowers and the leaves go. Now, what is a study? If you're new and you don't know what a study is, it's basically written information, tells you about your supplies, the colors you need to use, and then first fire, second, third, all that kind of stuff. You have a line drawing in a study. Then usually they will also give you first fire and final fire or second fire. In this case, there were only two fires. So you can get studies. Mine are available online. They're $5. You just download them. Now, I find, though, that a lot of people don't learn a lot about design. And so you kind of keep using the studies, And I don't know that that's what you want to do long term. Everybody wants to be a little more creative and do their own thing. And when you start doing like Facebook Live or demonstrating in your club, you want to have your own design to show them. So what is design? It was really confusing to me. So I went to Canada, and Lorna McLaren, I think, the class I had there, I think she explained it the best, and because she was showing us while she was explaining it, it clicked. But I also have books that I've read. These are really good ones. This is Painting for Pleasure and Profit by Ruth Little. And I like this. You can see I have all kinds of pages marked because I refer to it quite a bit. It's one of my favorites. I also have Mary Ashcroft or Mary C. Hagan's book about how to successfully design hand-painted china. And she has a lot of interesting, she talks about still lifes and she also talks about landscapes and flowers and all kinds of things in here. But what I find from this book is that there's also theory in there, and that kind of confuses me from time to time. And the final book that I used as a reference to kind of make sure that I was on the right track is Pass Me Another Plate. And this is by Wanda Clapham, C-L-A-P-H-A-M. But I think Lorna explained three things that really resonated with me. One was the rule of thirds, or at least that's what these books call it, and then leading the eye. And finally, she had a 2/3, 1/3 rule, sort of. People sometimes call it the 80-20 rule, about how much should be the actual picture and how much space you should have when you paint something. Okay, so the rule of thirds. What's the rule of thirds? Pretty simple, and I'll explain it kind of like she did. This is it. You take and you draw lines so that you divide your plate into thirds vertically and then into thirds horizontally. And what you want to be able to see is that your focal point should be placed at the areas where the lines intersect. So this is my focal point, and you try to keep it in this cross-section general area, which in this case I have done to some degree. I think a better example is probably this plate that I did. And this plate, you can see, I divided it in thirds this way, horizontally, and vertically. And this is my focal point right here with these two flowers. And then there's like a secondary one up here, and there's a third one way over here, but it really doesn't matter. But that just gives you some idea of what to do. So you can try that. I used a grease pencil on my plates, but you don't have to. You can just look at them and see. And it'll tell you where things are missing. A lot of times, if you look at one of your plates, you'll know stuff is missing, and you try to figure out where it should go. This might help you too. In fact, this is one of my plates that I still kind of think needs a something, and it's this plate. And it seems like this whole side has nothing, and this side has not a whole lot, and I just didn't know what to do. But now that I've done, now that I'll think about this, I've got everything in the right areas. I think I just need to add a little more interest. So that's something that might help you. Another thing she suggested doing is avoiding straight lines. Now, I was painting a hollyhock. So this here is a straight line. It's kind of hard to avoid it. It's a straight line. On the other hand, what you don't want to do, this was in 2020. This is one of my first classes that I did where I designed my own. All the things that I've done with you, I've designed myself. And look at that, right through the middle. Do you see that straight line? That is a huge no-no. And the fact that it divides the plate in half is stupid. You can see there, that's a straight line, and that's something you want to avoid. And then she also said spend time on the shadows and the highlights, because that's what makes your piece. Now, this piece, I think, is the best when it comes to explaining shadows and highlights. This is a piece I did a long time ago, and I love it. I love it. It's one of my first pieces. I just had terrific luck with it. For some reason, wild roses are my thing. And you can see the darks and the lights, I think, in this piece really make it, and they make it very dramatic. And she also said, to some degree, now she didn't, but I was reading other places and they said, a lot of people spend forever on detail, little detail that nobody will ever notice. If you get the balance of the lights and darks and shadows and highlights right, a lot of times spending all that time on the detail isn't necessary, because people are going to keep looking at the area you want them to. Now we're going to talk about some ways to design. This is interesting. This isn't something Lorna gave us. This is something I think I read in Ruth Little's book, and I thought it was kind of cool. She uses the acronym SOUL, SOUL, to help you remember what you need to do. So the first way you can design is using an S. See the S there? It's backwards. Well, I guess if I turn it this, no, it's still backwards. So it's an S, but it's backwards that comes down the plate there. So that's an S. We all know about the C, right? And they call it a U because they needed a U, but there it is. There's your C. And if you turn it this way, there's a C. Okay, that's another way you can design. The O, I hadn't heard about the O. I hadn't even really, I guess I knew about it, but I didn't really think about it. But this is a good one. This is a plate by Barbara Duncan that I picked up at a thrift store. Oh, I loved it. And it's her, I think it's her apple. I don't think they're wild roses. Maybe they are. They've got wild rose leaves. And this is called an O design, where it's around the outside or it's elliptical. And you don't, see, in this case, you don't have to, you obviously, this is the top, but you don't have to fill it in all the way around. You can just fill it in a few different places here. And that will give you kind of that O design that you need. And leave the center. And then she put the gold on the edge, and she put a little bit of color. Can you see the color there? It's a real pretty light green. And all three of hers are different. So there's also a balance to it. There's a big one, a medium, and a smaller one. And I think that this is just a beautiful example of the O design. And the other one is the L. Now, this is probably the closest to an L I have, where it's coming here and across the bottom. But I think you would probably see that more on, like Eloise, you like to do those off-center things. And I think that's probably more that type of design, the L design. So that's another one. So remember, SOUL, S-O-U-L, the S curve, O, which is the ellipse or the circle, the U, which could also be a C, and L, which is just the down and across. Okay, now when it comes to painting, there are a couple of other considerations. One is a mug. If you're painting a mug, you should always try to paint so the design faces the person, according to what I've read. So you need to know if they're right or left-handed. Otherwise, assume they're right-handed and paint for a right-handed person. So that's one design element you should know about. Other things are, the further away something is, the smaller it is. And if it's in the distance, like, do you remember on the mug that we painted and there was a close shore and a further away shore that we saw? And I said, make sure you use a blue or a blue-green in that far away shore. When objects get further from you, they also get bluer and they get paler. So they don't have to have all that detail. If they're way out there, then just suggest them. And that's kind of what we did. We just did little circles and little puffs and things. And that was it for the trees on the far shore. And it worked out pretty well, I think, for everybody. Now, you know about identifying a light source. Everybody does. This plate, I think, or this pan, really shows the lights coming from here to there. I mean, that's obvious. And, of course, that's a very important thing to do in your piece so that everything is kind of cohesive. Here's another one. Even though the line is through the middle, I think the light source, you can definitely tell, is from here to there. Okay. And I even put a little yellow in here. Some older China painters used to use the yellow to sort of indicate the sunlight. You don't have to do that anymore, but you certainly could if you wanted to. And finally, the bright versus the dark for the drama. And that dustpan, the bright versus the dark, is, I think, really, really interesting. All right, what should you avoid? Now, I know you guys have things you can add to this. Repetition. You don't want to repeat the same thing over and over and over and over and over. You don't want an open flower, open flower, open flower. You don't want to do that. You want to add variety. So if a flower is open in one area, it should be a little more closed in another. It can be upside down in another. Here it's facing down. Here it's facing up. Then here you have two about the same size, although one is hidden, and that one's facing away. Okay, so you really want variety. You don't want things to repeat. Parallel lines. I don't have an example of that anywhere because I've never done that. Thank heavens. That's one I don't have to worry about avoiding. But they can be a bummer if you see two straight lines coming down. Like when you do trees, if you put all these trees in a row sometimes, or when you do flowers that come up from the bottom of the plate, what you want to do is curl them and make the stems go one way or the other. You don't want them all to be perfectly straight. That's parallel lines. Lines to the corner. Don't really have anything that has lines to the corner, but I will show you a way that you can deal with the corner if your design runs off into the corner. I don't know who did this, and if anybody recognizes it, please let me know. I got this also at an antique store, and this is perfect. You divide, if you were to divide this way and this way, and then this way and this way, you would hit this bunch and this bunch in those cross lines that we have on the plate, and that would, that's perfect. The other thing is, you'll notice that when she does go to the corners here, she stops by adding some leaves and things, and the same thing up at the top. She does the same thing, adds leaves and what have you. Now, when you do go off the plate, it's okay to go off the plate in the corners, but you don't want to go off the plate at the top. You don't want to go off the plate at the bottom or either side, because it's extremely distracting. So try to avoid that. All righty. All one size. You make your cherries, they're all one size. You make your berries, they're all one size. You make your flowers, they're all one size. Boring. So you don't want to do that. That's a no-no. All right, now we're going to talk about leading the eye. And this was something that Lorna talked about quite a bit with our Parrot. And I didn't really realize till I got home how important that was. Leading the eye means that you can lead a person back to the focal point over and over and over again. And all you really need to do is make sure that you've taken your leaves or your stems or anything else that's in the background and tried to, instead of letting it go off the plate like we talked about here, you try to block it so that they go back and they look at the main design. Now this is a plate I did, the first plate I ever did on Paint and Porcelain. And this one is a good example of leading the eye. This is my focal point, and this stem brings you back into the center, back into the focal point. On the other hand, this one leads you down at the wrong spot, the 6 o'clock. I should have probably have either done that or curled it back up so it came back up this way. But that gives you an idea of leading the eye. Here's another one. This is a Morning Glory that I did a while ago. And you can see these tendrils. I've got a couple out here, and I've got one, I think, up in here. Yeah. Now the tendrils, I have them going off at the wrong position. See how distracting that is? I kind of only look at those. They kind of stand out like a sore thumb. Plus, I think if you had to say, they aren't parallel lines because they're curly, but they're very close together. I probably should have moved them so that they went either down or around or something, just to bring everything back up to the focal point at the top. Now, I'm going to show you the Parrot because it has all of the things that she was talking about. Now, if you do the lines to divide it and you go across this way, his head is right at an intersection. That's what you want. Okay, see, that's the whole Parrot. It's a little too big. But if you look up here, even though this leaf goes off, she brought a branch up and back towards the Parrot. This comes down towards him. This faces him. Even the leaf on the end here goes back to the Parrot. Now, down here, I did more of this, and I think I went off, you can see. But I tried with the branches come back, this branch comes back, this branch comes back. So the whole idea is to try to bring people, here's another one right here, oh, right here, is to bring people back to the subject and to keep the eye going around the piece so that they really take in the whole piece. 80-20 is like how much space to how much design do you actually have on the plate. And this one, of course, is, I think, probably, oh, wait, before we do that, look at this guy. The pumpkin plate that we did. Is that not, first of all, where's the light coming from? It's not coming from the front. Where's the light coming from? Okay, it's coming from the back. And as far as leading the eye, every one of these, and this is Randy's design, on either side leads you back to the pumpkin, which is the center focal point. So if you have this is a good example of leading the eye. And also of changing light. You don't have to always have it coming from the right or the left. You can have it coming from behind. Okay, we were talking about the 80-20 or the 1/3, 2/3. This is the best example I have. It's not mine, obviously, but she did, obviously, 2/3 in the flower, and 1/3 of it is space. And I find this is a very attractive plate, and I just love it. I just love it. Here's the clock. If you need to make a clock and divide it up, you divide it in 3, and then it's not every number in the clock. But if you put the numbers there, you'll see 12, 6, 9, and 3. You don't want to go off in those areas. And I'm just going to tape this here somewhere so that I remember that. And I'm also going to try to do all the things that I said I would do because I think it'll really improve things. Now, there are things that you design that are just the center of the piece, like this. It's just the center of the piece. And it's also a tile, and it's also has straight leaves that come out of it. So this one, now I don't know. You're going to have the leaves going out. Should you always have them? Like this one comes back in a little, goes up a little. There are none on this side, and these go kind of out to the sides, not straight up. So I guess I'm okay. But you will have pieces like this where it's perfectly fine to put the subject in the middle and work around it. We did that with the squirrel, and I've done it with a number of different plates. Most of you should be trying to design your own plates. Oh, the other thing I should tell you, Pinterest is a good place to go if you're designing your own plates. I have a Pinterest board called Paint and Porcelain, and you can go there, and I have it divided by, crocus, roses, all that. So you can go there. You can also just Google them and get really good photos, or you can go in your backyard and take photos. The main thing is when you're designing your own piece, you want to make sure that as much as possible, it's original. So go out and take lots of photos. Or if you're going to Google something, look for free photos. Do not use something that's copyrighted, and don't copy it completely, please. Otherwise, you have to give credit to the person you copied it from, and even then, they may not want you to use it. So keep that in mind. I think the best thing to do is just to pull together all your favorite things and then sort of do your crosshatch on the plate and decide where to position what kind of a rose or flower or animal, and then work from there. Now, our little squirrel, he was smack dab in the middle of the page, but he was kind of an L design because the big branch came down and went across. So things like that. I mean, just keep in mind some of these points, and I hope that this helps you in designing your own piece. Alrighty. Pick up those brushes and keep painting, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Program, and I hope you'll take a minute to subscribe so that other people can learn more about China painting and we can get the word out to more people. You also can look at the links below. My paintandporcelain.com website has a lot of freebies and printables for new and experienced painters, as well as studies, supplies, and even some of my hand-painted china. So thank you again, and I'll see you next time.